Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. Scott Mitchell is going to join us at the top of hour number 2. Chris Kamrani will be with us at 12:30. We'll talk about the BYU side of things. Riley Nelson is going to give us the Coug perspective. Look, BYU, undefeated team. They've got Kansas, who's red hot, but they're coming to LaVell Edwards Stadium, the Jayhawks are. BYU is going to be favored in at least 2 of the last 3 games in their season. Utah, I think, is going to be underdogs as they take on a Colorado team that Colorado can score points. Colorado's a good football team right now. It pains me to say it. These 2 back-to-back matchups are teams that one is your rival and is supposed to be kind of the antithesis of who you are, even though they're just right now they're your twin brother who happens to be growing. You've gone through puberty together, and unfortunately the twin brother has now, but they're a good team who's a good team because of the things that you are proud of your program for being good at. And obviously we talked last week about the commonality. There's 10 assistant coaches on this BYU staff. 4 of them spent extensive amount of time at the University of Utah. A couple of them played at the University of Utah. And, of course, the head coach was a longtime member of the Kyle Whittingham staff here and learned a lot. Take nothing away from BYU. All right? Utah came to this game ready to play. Whatever problems there were in the locker room, whatever issues there were in self-belief, all of that cultural stuff appeared to have evaporated over the bye week. I shouldn't say evaporated because that suggests it was not work that made it happen. Like the coaching staff and the leadership on this team did whatever it was, and hopefully we'll get to the bottom of it when we have Mekhi Bernard on this week, when we have Mike Bajakian on this week. I'm actually hosting the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show tomorrow night because Bill Riley has basketball duties, so hopefully I can get to the bottom of it with Coach Witt. I know that there were alum invited to talk to the team during the bye week as they were trying to figure out how to really best instill what Utah football is in a bunch of guys that, are new to the program and what the BYU-Utah rivalry is for a bunch of guys who don't really know. Only 9 players on this team had participated in the rivalry game. And, there's probably couple dozen who have a good idea of how much that game truly means in state. So a bunch of alumni were brought in, and they were invited to stand and watch the game from the sideline the whole game. I mean, there were some all-time greats there. Rojo was there. Bo Nagahi was there. Casey Evans was there. Maake Kemoyatu was there. Dave Revel was there. There were a bunch of really great, old-school Utes. And there's, guys like me who were also there. But that stuff that I was so worried about heading into the BYU game, does this team still believe in itself? Is this team still together? Is this locker room still believing the message and believing what Coach Witt says? I feel like the way that they played in this game against BYU, the answer to that was yes. So now it's time to fix for Utah, who's having an abysmally disappointing season. Now it's time to fix the things that are not related to player mentality. It's time to fix the things that are more within your control as a coach. And it's not going to be easy to fix these things, but number one issue this season has been the quarterback situation at the University of Utah. You got woefully unlucky for the second season in a row with Cam Rising going down to an injury. Now, there were a lot of people when this was a 2-game losing streak and when this was a 3-game losing streak saying you had to have a better backup plan. You had to have a better backup available to you than the true freshman Isaac Wilson. Guess what, Utah fans? You did have a better backup available to you. His name was Brandon Rose. And is he a world beater? Is he Cam Rising? No. But Brandon Rose showed me against BYU that when it got a little bit too big for Isaac Wilson, this battle should have happened 3 weeks ago.
I agree. And Brandon Rose, 8 for 10, 84 yards in the first half, 2 touchdowns. Granted, he only completed 4 throws in the second half, which gave him 112 yards and a pick for his final stat. But first start of his collegiate career, he balled out.
The interception was a miscommunication between he and the wide receiver. He threw it to the center of the field, which, please, attack the center of the field more often. Now, I know why they don't do it, because they have young quarterbacks, and it's dangerous territory in there, right? But when you've got a deep tight end room that can create matchup problems over the middle, that's like the seams. I don't know. I have to find a spray chart. Maybe you can Google this for me. Maybe you can find this while I'm ranting. We need to find a spray chart for Utah quarterbacks on the season. I want to know what percentage of routes, what percentage of throws are even attempted inside the numbers for Utah. There's so much focus on the outside and so much focus on the little tiny short routes. Gosh, I feel like if they would attack the middle of the field a little bit more. But I'm doing a thing that I hate when other people do, saying, well, I know how to do this better. I don't know how to do it better. I don't know how to coordinate an offense better. But something needs to happen to improve quarterback evaluation at the University of Utah. Brandon Rose is the spark, or was enough of a spark against BYU, that I can look at it and say, you probably should have done this earlier. And that is not to disparage Isaac Wilson. He's a true freshman who's got some talent, got some ability, has handled really everything that's been thrown at him with admirable maturity in my mind. I think that he could be the future of the program, but he needs to develop. And Brandon Rose was far from perfect against BYU, as Zach's reading of the stat line just indicated for you. But look, this is a guy who in his first collegiate start did some really, really nice things with both his arm and with his legs. And on top of that, the mistakes that were made, some of the issues that you saw that were like, there were a couple of throws that were very dangerous throws that fluttered a teeny bit, that he absolutely had to hit to the outside and snuck a little bit close. Now, those didn't hurt you. Those didn't kill you. Snuck a little inside on some of those throws. That's experience-based stuff as well. So I can look at Brandon Rose's performance against BYU and say, hey, given the position you were put in, that was pretty admirable. That was a pretty solid performance. I didn't like the play calling nearly as much in the second half as I did in the first half. I didn't like the execution in the second half like I did in the first half. Those two things always go hand in hand. But Brandon Rose was put in a situation where he's facing an undefeated BYU team in a rivalry game in front of the largest crowd in Rice-Eccles Stadium history, and he came out and had a great first half. Now, figure out what happened in the second half. It's above our pay grade, is a popular phrase in sports this weekend. But I look at this guy, and I say, how did it take so long to give him a real shot? If Cam Rising was 100% healthy and ready to go, that's the reason why it takes so long to give Brandon Rose a shot. But Cam Rising has been plagued by injury. Cam Rising went down. Brandon Rose had this backup job, and then he himself got hurt in a scrimmage of all things. And you look at it, and it's like, this coaching staff doesn't dislike Brandon Rose. So what the bleep has taken so long for us to see Brandon Rose?
It's a great question, and I don't know either. Like at the start of the season, Andy Ludwig loved Isaac Wilson. But now since he's gone, Khan wants Brandon Rose. Which I can never say his last name. I struggle. But stop smiling at me. You're giving me a creepy. But
here's the thing. Brandon Rose is a guy who has been in the program for a long time. His teammates, this is something that we as fans don't really ever get an accurate assessment of. We don't ever get our finger on the pulse until we really see it, right? And I'm not telling you he's Cam Rising, all right? Cam Rising is going to go down in Utah history as a very complicated story that is mostly like 95% positive and 5% what the hell happened, right? Brandon Rose is a guy who his teammates respond to well for whatever reason. Not on the same level as Cam Rising, but his teammates clearly respond well to him. They clearly have some belief in him. And part of that's just familiarity. Part of that is just like, I've seen the guy working. Now, maybe there's some guys who didn't believe in him as much. But when the quarterback situation started to devolve as it has at the University of Utah, I'm going to ask Kyle Whittingham this. I'm going to do my best for all of you, all right? I'm going to put on my big boy pants. I'm going to be real brave about it as I'm doing the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show, and I'm going to ask him in a polite manner this question. Why did it take so long for Brandon Rose to get a real shot? Because the real shot, I think, gave us some indication that he's got the talent to win you games. Now, I don't know if he's your starter for the rest of the year, and I assume he will be. I don't know if he's got enough talent to overcome the rest of your offensive problems. I don't know if he's got enough talent to make you right where otherwise you would be wrong. Cam Rising had that talent. I don't know if Brandon Rose is going to get 4 starts and win 0 games. But I'm looking at it, and I'm asking the question anyway. Because I think the kid's got a little bit of moxie. He's certainly got arm talent, and he made some really good decisions in running the football.
He did.
He made it like he got down the field. He got his longest run of the game. He knew, and this is one of the things that if you don't get to carry the ball a lot, you forget about.
Yep.
He knew someone was going to run him down from behind, and what did he do? 2 hands on the ball, tucked it in front of his chest, and right then is when, forgive me, I don't remember the BYU defender chasing him down. That exact moment is when the guy was coming from behind to try and punch it out, and he didn't. Like, those are the little things that usually come with experience. Now, some of the throwing stuff is obviously going to take him more experience, more in-game experience, more live reps, more, hey, this is what it really looks like when the bullets are flying. It wasn't a perfect game by Brandon Rose by any stretch of the imagination. Was it good enough for me to say, hey, we probably should have seen this kid more? Again, hindsight 2020, revisionist history, all of that. But yes, I want more Brandon Rose is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do too.
He wasn't the problem.
No. And I just want more passing games instead of just a whole run game. Because I know Utah has adjusted to this power run, West Coast run offense, but you also have some good receivers. Dorian Singer, you got Pittman, you did have Money Parks at one point until he's out for the year, but you have these weapons at your disposal. So I want to see more passing with Brandon Rose, and I have those stats pulled up. It's not a spreadsheet though. But,
okay, what are the stats?
So attempts, completions, and interceptions: 280 attempts, 151 completions, 14 interceptions. Average yard per attempt is 6.8 yards.
Okay,
per play.
but you don't have where on the field they're happening.
No.
Okay.
My guess would be more on the outside of the numbers.
That's what I'm really looking for.
Yeah.
We can find those numbers easily. I need, if anyone, I'll find it during a break. All right.
I couldn't find it, so.
Brandon Rose, a solid first outing. All right. And unfortunately, that solid first outing begs larger questions about quarterback evaluation in the program. All right. Show today and every day brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. Les Schwab has the tires, wheels, and accessories for whatever you drive. Stop by your local Les Schwab today. Let the professionals get the job done right the first time. Also, quick reminder for all of you, Advanced Windows, now's the time to replace those old, shoddy, not really sealing things tightly anymore type windows. The largest discounts of the year are available right now, and you can lock in 2024 pricing, even if they don't install the windows until spring of 2025. Give Advanced Windows a call, 801-850-9100. Tell them that OC sent you. Hot lunch is coming. A fine for the athletic director at the University of Utah. Mark Harlan went scorched earth on the Big 12 officials. We'll talk about it in the hot lunch. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700.
12 years, this game was absolutely stolen from us. We were excited about being in the Big 12, but tonight I am not. We won this game, someone else stole it from us. Very disappointed. I will talk to the commissioner. This was not fair to our team. I'm disgusted by the professionalism of the officiating crew tonight. Thank you. 12 years. This game was absolutely stolen from us.
Hot Lunch brought to you by Lemon Shark Poke right here on 300 South in downtown Salt Lake City. Go in, ask them for the OC Bowl. It'll show you salmon, some pineapple, some crunchy garlic on that sushi rice. It's awesome. Edamame on top and ginger as well. And you can build your own bowl. You don't have to get what I tell you to get. You can build your own bowl. They fly the fish in fresh. They get it every single day. It's really fantastic. Lemon Shark Poke, sponsor of the Hot Lunch. That was Mark Harlan. He went off script. He came in. He talked to the media post-game. He went scorched earth. He didn't like what he saw. He's going to have to pay $40,000 for it. And more importantly, he's now on Brett Yormark's you-know-what list. Brett Yormark doesn't mess around when it comes to this kind of stuff, so that's going to be something that Mark Harlan has to be careful of moving forward. When you talk about people playing to their base, though, this is, I think, probably what a lot of Utah fans were feeling in that exact moment. You don't always see the athletic director at a school being the one to voice that immediately and angrily. But he did. And so Mark Harlan was his second statement that he issued in response to the fine announcement was that he will accept the consequences of the fine. Of course he will. And on we go. On we move here on the Hot Lunch. So another thing about this, like fan bases, here's what you got to do. Take the 5% of the loudest, most annoying BYU fans and lop them off your social media. Mute them. Don't block them. That gives them satisfaction. Just mute them, okay? And do the same thing with the Ute fanatics, the crazy ones, the loud ones that have given the entire fan base a bad reputation around the country and certainly on social media in the Big 12. And I think there's a decent understanding of how close this game was, how awesome this game was. And I think there's actually a realistic understanding for a lot of the BYU fans that I've spoken to in person. None of you yahoos on social media are willing to admit this, but it's actually really unfortunate that the referees became such a story in this game and that you have to, as a BYU fan even, pause and zoom in and say, yep, that's definitely a hold. You know damn well that if this call were reversed and it was BYU that had been hurt by this call, you'd feel the exact same way. Now, the call didn't decide the game. The game was decided by BYU making 6 extra plays that Utah was not able to make after this.
Yeah, about 6.
Cam Calhoun had the following play after the hold, right? An interception in both hands. I'm not trying to call Cam Calhoun out, all right? He played a good game. He had the interception on the 2-point conversion attempt. He's a good player, and I think he's a bright part of Utah's future. But it's not like there were not opportunities for you to seal this game anyway. When you give the referees too much power, when you say it's your fault to the referees, or you say, hey, thank you, referees, for bailing us out, that's not ideal. If you're a BYU fan right now, you got to look in the mirror and you got to realize that sack ended the game for a lot of people, ended the game for a lot of Utah fans, and they got robbed because of it. If it was your team that felt that way, then you'd be like, yeah, that was a robbery. That was terrible. And you would be wrong, by the way, for feeling like it all came down to that, for reducing it to that. So that's one of the most annoying things about this whole situation is that call overshadows the conversation around the game. And the reaction to that call overshadows the conversation around the game, or it gives whoever ammunition. That one play, that one call, like the Beck to Harleen thing, as aggravating as that is for Utah fans, is a legendary play. Austin Collie converting on 4th and 18, that is a legendary play. Those are Brandon Burton blocking that kick. You know what the thing is with the common theme with all of those plays is? It was the players that are the focus of the conversation. They made the plays. And unfortunately, this was a thing where the main focus, and I'm not just talking about locally, the main focus nationally, the conversation nationally is around this call or no call. Do you call it there? Do you not call it there? Is it a hold? Yeah, there's contact, but is it a hold in real time when you watch it in real time? I don't know. Was the quarterback even looking that way? All of these things. Instead of, we made the plays, our team is undefeated for a reason, we're slightly better, the entire country is talking about this call. And it's unfortunate because the game was so much bigger than this and so much better than this, and the context of it should not have been stolen. The story should not have been stolen, chronic, and that affects your life. And maybe that lack of sleep is something that makes it hard for you to work. Maybe you've already gone to your traditional medicine routes and you don't like the way that sleeping pills make you feel. There are alternatives out there, but you shouldn't just be going to the gas station and grabbing a product, especially a CBD product. If you're looking for something that can help you with that sleeplessness, with the restless leg syndrome, with the chronic pain, go down and talk to our friends at Farmer and Chemist in historic Midvale. Doug joins us now to talk about what they have available for you. Doug, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thanks, brother. Always good to be with you. I definitely took my gummy on Saturday night or Sunday morning.
Yeah, it would have been early Sunday morning by the time all that stuff ended. But I think there were a lot of people who needed that just to get to sleep, and then they woke up and probably wanted to take some more to go back to sleep rather than facing the annoyance and the reality of it. But, in all honesty, these things that we're talking about, these issues that people deal with are bigger in a lot of cases than a reaction even to a beloved rivalry game. If I'm having those sleepless nights and I've been through the traditional methods, why do you think, or why should I think, that what Farmer and Chemist can provide might work for me?
Yeah, it's a great question. As a pharmacist, people would come into our pharmacy and have the same question. What can I do to get some sleep? I've got to go to work tomorrow. I've got a big meeting. I'm anxious about the next day, or I'm just not sleeping well every night, but don't want to get addicted to prescription medicines. And that's a serious issue, and they have some major side effects. So at Farmer and Chemist, we found that we have an amazing natural product based in CBD, which we've all heard about, with a little bit of CBN, which nobody really knows about, but it's another cannabinoid that works great for sleep and anxiety. And then if you like the THC, just a little bit of THC. If you don't like it, zero THC. But either way, you take a gummy in the evening about 45 minutes before you want to lay down and go to sleep, and you'll sleep better than you've slept in weeks.
You have a discount for our ESPN 700 listeners, right?
Absolutely. If you come into the store at 7719 South Main Street in Midvale, or go online at farmerandchemist.com and use the promo code ESPN700, then you get 20% off of all of your purchase.
And Doug, what if I come in, all right, I'm like, I heard this ad, I want to go check out the store. It's, by the way, aesthetically, a really cool place, but I don't really know what product is going to help with whatever it is I'm dealing with. There's going to be somebody there in store, a pharmacist there in store, that can kind of walk me through what to select, right?
Yeah, you hit it on the spot in the intro. If you go into a gas station or you're going to your barber or wherever and you're getting CBD, the information you're going to get, the delivery of the CBD is probably going to be a little sketchy. So come into Farmer and Chemist. Pharmacists are there. Trained technicians are there. We'll help you find the right product for you. It may not be a gummy. It might be a tincture. It might be something for your pet. It might be a salve to rub onto your shoulder or sore back or neck. But we'll help you find the right remedy for the pain or the anxiety and stress that you're feeling.
Go check them out at Farmer and Chemist. Tell them that OC sent you. We'll be giving away a Farmer and Chemist gift card in our trivia section today. Doug, thanks as always.
Danny, thank you.
Check out Farmer and Chemist. Also, this time of year, you're probably trying to figure out what you're going to give to mom, to grandma, to dad for Christmas, right? And if your parents are anything like my parents, they just, there's something they want, they just buy it for themselves, right? But the gift that always keeps on giving, the photo albums, the prints of the kids, the prints of the grandkids, the prints of the grandpets, whatever it is. any of your printing and your shipping needs, for that matter, can be handled by my friends at Postnet. I'm telling you, I'm not saying this just because it's an advertisement on the Sean O'Connell Show. My mom is going to get a bound, printed, professional quality photo album of her grandkids, and Postnet is the one who's going to be doing that for me. Spoiler, my mom doesn't listen to the radio show, so I can say this without spoiling the surprise. In any case, they're all over the place. I prefer going down to Draper so I can say hello to the dogs, but they're in Salt Lake. They're in North Salt Lake. Tell Postnet that Sean O'Connell sent you. They're going to hook you up. And more importantly, they're going to take care of your printing and shipping needs like it's you getting the job done for yourself. Customer service is the thing that they pride themselves on. And if it's not adequate, if it's not up to your standard, they will make sure that it gets right. I've got 100 different anecdotal stories from listeners, from friends who have gone to Postnet and something, I don't know, gets lost, something gets misprinted, something doesn't turn out. They misspell something that they wanted to put in the book. Postnet makes it right. Customer service is the number one priority for my friends over at Postnet. Tell them I sent you. Scott Mitchell joins us next. We'll talk about, well, you guessed it, this rivalry game, what the loss means for Utah. Can they make a bowl game in 2024? The legendary Utah quarterback Scott Mitchell next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network.
Second down and 10. He'll stay in the backfield with Brandon Rose. Three receivers, two receivers, two tight ends for Utah. Rose gonna hand it, no play action pass. Looking, firing to the outside. End zone caught. Touchdown! Brand Keithy! Sixth touchdown of the year for Brand Keithy. First of the career of Brandon Rose, and Utah leads. PAT up and PAT good. 6 plays, 64 yards. A Pepsi touchdown of 20 yards to Brand Keithy.
That highlight courtesy of our friends at Utah Sports Radio Network. That was Bill Riley on the call. Alongside Bill Riley on the call, as he is on all these games, Scott Mitchell, our next guest, legendary quarterback at the University of Utah, joining us now in the postmortem of the Holy War. Scott, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Not really. I'm living. Man, a lot to talk about, and I just can't wait to get into all this. There's a lot there.
All right, let's talk about I'm going against my own instinct here because I know it's what people want to hear about. I know it's what people want to talk about. People can't help but talk. Call him back, please. We got to call him back. You can't hear me, you said. Figure it out with Scott Mitchell. I'm going to ask him look, he played a lot more football than anyone we saw up on the hill. Scott Mitchell played the quarterback position in the NFL. You got me now, Scott?
Yeah.
All right. The defensive hold. You're a quarterback. If that's your wide receiver, are you making a split decision on whether you're throwing the ball to that guy that is affected one way or another by that contact at the line of scrimmage?
Really, my issue with to answer your question, it didn't look like in the game that Retzlaff was looking to that side of the field in that time. The challenge I have with all of this is, and we've talked about it on the air. I've talked to Coach Whittingham about it multiple times this year. And the feeling is they're letting these DBs and wide receivers play. You don't get holding calls. You don't get pass interference calls. I mean, it has to be brutally blatant for that to happen. And that's different. That's different than how it was in the Pac-12. It's noticeably been a very and it's been consistent across all year long. So you're playing this way. You know you can play this way, and you're in the most important moment of the game, and now all of a sudden they go, you got to be a little bit nicer. Now, watching the play, he was held. Was it inside of 5? Was it not? Who knows? But he was held to some degree, and so I could see why an official would possibly call that, but when they consistently haven't all year, that's what makes it challenging, makes it brutal. And let's face it, it's hard when you think you've won the football game. Everyone's excited. I mean, the game's over. It's done. And then it kind of takes the air out of everything that's going on. And clearly you could see it kind of it really impacted the defense. It impacted kind of everything that was happening. And the result, was a loss.
It was very nearly like the 2012 game, where you had to win the game 3 times because, I mean, as you know, you were on the call. You made the stop on the play previous to this one, and Kalani Sitake had called a timeout right before the snap. So Everybody in the stadium thought the game was over on the previous play, and then on this play, the sack, and, of course, there's laundry on the field. I mean, players were ready to run out on the field and celebrate, right? And then, okay, that's ridiculous, and like you said, a deflating moment. And then, the very next play, ball nearly gets intercepted, and that would have been a much better story for Utah fans. It would have been exactly like the 2012 game where you have to win it 3 times. But instead, they don't get to make the plays. They don't find a way to make the plays defensively to keep BYU out of field goal range. And I'm not doing this to call out the defense because the defense played lights out the whole night, but it feels like this season has gone this way to some respect for the University of Utah, where if 1 or 2 things happens a little bit differently in a game, then maybe the entire outcome is different, and it's now
it's now ruined the season. It's now 5 losses in a row, and this one against the rival. So, is there a path forward where you could see this Utah team recovering? Because they played a lot better against BYU. Can they recover? Can they make a bowl game?
Well, you saw him fight. Watching him right in the warm-ups, you could just see there was a bounce in their step. There was energy. You got a lot of guys back defensively. I mean, what people don't realize is Keanu Tunavasa and Junior Tafuna were out in that game against Houston, and so there were some tired guys at the end of that game, and it really showed. So having your full rotation there, getting Connor O'Toole back a little bit, and you got a healthy Karendi Reed, and the defense. The defense has played pretty exceptional all year. I mean, and the thing I thought over the weekend, really, Sean, was you got to be big enough so they can't rig it, right? That's kind of the theme of this last election. Win by such a margin that in the end they can't somehow get a holding penalty or have something, because it really puts a lot of pressure on your defense to say, okay, you're going to have to win this game for us. And as good as Utah's defense is, you can't have one slip up. You can't have one mistake. You can't have one guy, as we described, it was kind of one guy in each of these situations that didn't get their job done. I mean, the interception by Calhoun is right in his hands. I mean, it's probably a pick six if he actually catches it. He should catch it. These guys have caught him before, and it, just in that moment, he just didn't make the play. But it's more about the whole team, and it's about the offense. You get the ball at the plus 50-yard line twice, and you can't get enough yards to at least attempt a field goal. That's not acceptable. But it was much had, and it was clearly much better with Brandon Rose in the lineup. The one interception he had, whether it wasn't like just an errant, bad, dumb, stupid decision. It looked like he thought the tight end was going to break in instead of go to the corner. And I don't know, we'll probably never know, but it looks like he was anticipating, and had the tight end turned in, then that would have been a big gain in that situation.
So Kyle Whittingham in his presser today said that was a miscommunication and that the tight end should have broke in. So
right.
he took the pressure off Rose for that one. And that's where I wanted to go with this conversation, because you and I talked about it a little bit up in the booth, and I just talked about it a segment ago. Like, I don't know what has taken so long to give Brandon Rose a real shot. There were a couple mistakes by him in this game and a couple risky throws that I think would be maybe ironed out by a little bit more experience. This was his first start against an undefeated rival, and he performed, especially in the first half, pretty admirably. Scott, what has taken so long before we got a chance to see this?
It's so I'm going to go back to Terrell Davis, okay? And he was in the doghouse when he was at Georgia. He hardly played. And this guy all of a sudden comes out of nowhere, and they go, "Where the heck have you been?" And he's I believe he's a Hall of Famer or close to it, or should be, or he was just a great running back for the Denver Broncos when they won those 2 Super Bowls. I mean, it was a lot because of him. And for whatever reason, he didn't mesh, didn't fit in, he didn't get the eye of his coaches. You got to remember, this team picked Charlie Brewer over Cam Rising, and it's hard. And where it's hard for me is it's all based on how you do in practice, and you don't really know if a guy's going to show up or not until you get in a game and the bullets start flying. Which is why in the NFL they have preseason games. They have real opportunities to get an idea, who the guy is. And I think it's really hard. So I'm not saying the Brandon Rose is in the dog houses with the coaches, but in their eyes, there's just things they weren't seeing, whatever that might be, that just didn't cause them to get all excited. Now, when I've watched him in warm-ups, and I pay really close attention to the quarterbacks in warm-ups, all year I've been like, this guy has the strongest arm on the team. This guy, wow, it's just like it's noticeable, and it's been noticeable when he's in the game. He's been exceptional with his accuracy and his like pocket presence. You know, the touchdown pass to Keithy, he has to step up in the pocket. He's got to stay strong. He's got a guy in his face, and he delivers a throw on the money. And he threw the ball very, very accurately in that game. And so I just, you know, for a guy playing his very first game, starting against BYU in a tough situation, he was excellent. He was great. And a lot of the second half was kind of the conservative nature of how Utah was calling things. You get the ball on the 50-yard line. I mean, you got to go for the throat with people. You got to go after them. You got to get aggressive. You got to go win the game as opposed to, well, let's just not lose it right here.
Yeah, punting when you're already on your side of the field in order to try and control a clock and things like that. I realize it when your defense is playing well, you feel like you can lean on them, but the offense at some point has to carry some of the load for this Utah football team. Scott Mitchell is our guest here. Utes Insiders are brought to you by Metro Elevator, Utah's preferred vertical transportation expert. If you got an elevator in your building that is unreliable, tell the building manager to call Metro Elevator. Look, 2 of the touchdowns in this game for a Utah offense that in the first half looked much improved came from Brant Keithy, and Brant Keithy is out for the rest of the year. Really a sad story, the way that it's finished out for him, for Cam, for all these guys that have been in the program for so long. But on an X's and O's perspective, what does losing Brant Keithy for the rest of the year do to this already struggling offense as they have to finish out 3 games?
Well, if there was a position group that had a lot of depth, it was certainly the tight ends, and a lot of them haven't had an opportunity to really showcase what they can do. Landon King was great a year ago, and you certainly hope that he's the guy that can step up. But the other guys, I think, have that potential. It's just a matter of incorporating them into the offense. Now, Brant was kind of their power back at the goal line, and it was good to see Utah say, okay, we're going to run the ball here. We don't care. We're going to run it, and Keithy's our guy, and we're going to get extra tight ends, and he's going to get lead blockers, and that's what we're going to do. And I like that. And now that he's out, do they have a guy there? And they might have to change that up. It may have to look different than what it did last week, but that was certainly a good adjustment or a good strategy at least, and that could potentially hurt. But it's all about playmakers, and that's what Keithy's been in his career. He's been a guy that's found ways to come up big in big moments, and that's what you need to look for. That's what you need to find, and I think there's the potential of that because Brandon Rose is a guy that can really throw the football. He really can, Sean, and it's something to really build on, and it's whether it's finding that playmaker somewhere else in the offense, whether it's a wide receiver or a different tight end, the capability's there. I mean, clearly from the quarterback side of it, you have someone that I believe can deliver the ball, and we'll see who can emerge as that next guy like Keithy was.
As difficult as it is to acknowledge, and it pains all the Utah fans to hear, look, BYU made the plays down the stretch to find a way to win this game and to remain undefeated. They are far from a perfect team, but their record is perfect. They've got a tough Kansas game coming. What did you see from BYU that either makes you think, hey, they can win a Big 12 championship, or maybe that's not quite in the cards for them?
Well, the biggest thing is how they play for each. You really sense they play for each other, and they play hard. And they're put in positions where they're playing sound football on both sides of the ball. Offensive line, it always starts up front, and their offensive line, they did get some injuries. They've had a couple, but has been really excellent. And the thing about BYU is there's no superstar. It's by committee. It's just a team effort. It's a team effort on defense, on offense. It's all hands on deck, and they play hard, and you can win a lot of football games. I mean, this conference is so evenly matched as far as the talent level that it's anybody's game. I mean, there's no team that just go, wow, they're just head and shoulders above everyone at this point. And BYU is just playing with a lot of belief, a lot of confidence. They turn the ball over. They're opportunistic. And we talked about it in our pregame. They take advantage of the opportunities they have, and they just fight and play hard. I mean, Retzlaff, I wouldn't say is just a great, outstanding quarterback, but he's got moxie. He's got, he's a gamer, and he's come up big in big moments.
Scott, I'll let you go so we could stay on the clock. I know you're going to join me again later in the week, but appreciate you. Listening to your call back, because I had to watch this game a couple of times. You guys do a great job, even in a hard season. So thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
That's Scott Mitchell, Utah quarterback, legend, color analyst on the Utah radio broadcast, and you can hear a bunch of the highlights with him and Bill Riley. This is not an easy year to get amped up and to give you like great broadcasts, but they continue to do so. Big 12 at noon, brought to you by Mountain Land Supply. You can visit mountainlandsupply.com or see any of the showrooms, including a brand new one that just opened last month. Chris Kamrani of The Athletic joins us next. I love talking big picture stuff with Chris Kamrani. The quarterback evaluation problems at the University of Utah. What is the solution? Maybe he'll have an answer. On the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network.
Chris, you got me?
Here we go with goal now for Utah. They're 3 for 3 on this drive on third. Keithy again at the quarterback. Rose flexed out wide to the right. Tight ends on the left-hand side. Keithy's going to take it himself into the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Brant Keithy! Into the red of the north end zone and takes the lead back with 5:31 to play here in the first half.
Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday. Postmortem on the Holy War. That highlight was brought to you by Utah Sports Radio Network. Once again, Bill Riley on the call. Brant Keithy scored 2 touchdowns, and that's going to be it for him as a Ute. Out for the rest of the season. You wish him the best, as it sounds like he's probably got another surgery in store, and that usually means a long recovery, and that means he's going to miss the NFL evaluation period for the draft. And man, what a tough series of events for Brant Keithy, not only because his final season has not gone the way that everyone hoped it would, but now cut short by another injury that, according to what very little we know, is a very serious one. Rough, man. Chris Kamrani from The Athletic, one of the best in the business, and is kind enough to join us right now to talk about this holy war and what it means for Utah and for BYU. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good morning, Sean. How are you, man?
Great. Glad to have you with me. You and I talk all the time about, what do we think is going to happen in the future for this Utah football program. Kyle Whittingham, post-game, was as angry and as fed up as I've ever seen him. Part of that's, the call, the circumstances, et cetera. Losing to your rival and losing 5 in a row is not going to have any head coach feeling happy. Do you think that the way that this season has unfolded will have significant bearing on Kyle Whittingham's decision to either ride off into the sunset or to come back to try to not have this be the final chapter in the book?
Yeah, my uninformed opinion, Sean, is I think if you were to ask me to gauge it, I'd say it's a coin flip right now. But knowing how competitive and intense Kyle is, and knowing how much pride he's taken in building that program, I honestly have a hard time seeing him walking away after a season like this. And I'm talking like with the assumption that Utah will probably lose a couple more games along the way. To go from a preseason conference champion contender picked by the media to win the first Big 12 conference once it's moved to 16 teams, and then to finish, they're 4-5 now, have lost 5 in a row, could potentially finish 4-8 on an 8-game losing streak. That doesn't, to me, if you were to ask me like how that would sit with Kyle going into the offseason, my guess would be not that well, at all, obviously. So, but Utah's an interesting study case right now, Sean, because they have their coach in waiting. They have their plan set up. It's not like Utah will have to hit the restart button if and when Kyle decides to retire. Everything is basically in place now. When Morgan takes over, he'll have to figure out who he wants on his staff. But if you were to ask me, I'd say it's a coin flip right now. I'm fascinated to see how the next few weeks play out because, this is a weird game. If Utah can go to Colorado and upset a very talented Colorado team and eke out a win over those last 2 games and be bowl eligible, have some momentum going into the offseason, it's not a totally different story from where we are right now today, but it would be markedly different compared to the alternative, which would potentially be 4-8 or 5-7.
All right, so that's kind of a big picture question I started with. If we zoom back in on this rivalry game and what unfolded at Rice-Eccles Stadium on Saturday night, what was your number one takeaway? Everyone had a different reaction to the hold or no hold, the conversation after the hold or no hold, the drive that ensued after that. When you turned off the television or when you walked away from this stadium, what was like the thing that stood out most to you in the way the game unfolded?
I think there were 2 things, Sean. One, and this is a very easy cliche analogy, but watching that BYU team, man, it's really hard not to harken back to that 08 Utah team. Like, it was a team that was really talented, but not like an insanely stacked group, and they found ways to win weird games, found ways to win hard games. And, the crossover, the cross-pollination between members on that staff down in Provo now that were part of that staff in '08, there's a lot of guys on that team. So that was my first takeaway, because you think about winning ugly, that SMU game early on in the year, which is now easily BYU's best win on their resume. Very ugly game. They got it done. You need some miraculous stuff to happen, man. Like the Oklahoma State game reminded me of, TCU, Utah, 2008. Like, you need some crazy stuff to happen. And then to win a rivalry game in that fashion, I'm not saying BYU is going to run the table, because the Big 12 has proven to us this year that anybody can get got on any weekend. But that was my BYU takeaway. My second takeaway was hearing Mark Harlan go to the lectern and deliver an impassioned speech about how he felt like Utah got cheated out of the game, seeing Kyle very upset on the field, seeing players upset on the field. It felt like things finally boiled over, because, listen, man, this was a team that felt like they should be in the position that their rivals are in now.
Correct.
They lost at home in the fashion that they did. So much has gone against this team this year that I just felt like just everything came to a boil, and the steam basically made the lid hit the roof. I don't think it was a great look for Utah and Mark Harlan to do that. Obviously, he's been fined $40,000 by the Big 12 and Commissioner Brett Yormark. But I think that to me was the takeaway from the Utah side, was it has been going sideways so long, so often, basically body blow after body blow, talking to my guy. He knows what that's like. And eventually, Saturday felt like a forearm to the temple. And I think that was just it's not a gut punch. I'm going to say forearm to the temple. That's my fighting analogy, Sean. What do you think?
Pretty solid, I guess. I'd probably say elbow to the temple, but
elbow. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. Chris Carmody, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the aftermath of that Utah versus BYU Holy War. Look, officiating is a part of the conversation in the Big 12 Conference, and it's not just us here locally. Joel Klatt was talking about it today. You got to call games consistently or whatever it was. Was the hold call inconsistent with what you've seen the Big 12 officiating, the pattern they've developed all year?
I don't think so. I mean, listen, Joey McGuire down at Texas Tech had something to say after their loss to Colorado. And I'm not saying that Joey was making an excuse, but he was clearly unhappy after that game and the way things unfolded, because that game got out of hand. I don't know if Utah BYU got out of hand from an officiating point of view, but there were a lot of flags, as there tend to be in that type of game. Listen, man, that is a 50-50 call. It takes a lot of gall, takes a lot of chutzpah to make it in that moment. I understand the fact that Jake was basically wrestled to the ground by the time that flag was thrown. But you can nitpick and slow-mo your replays on social media all you want. It's a 50-50 call, and in this case, it was a 51-49 call. And I am of the mindset that, yes, it is a unfortunate development for Utah, but BYU still had to go another 50 yards, Sean.
Yeah.
It's like on the very next play, Cam Calhoun had an interception that would have sealed the game.
Yep.
Went through his hands.
Yeah, we talked about that on the show. It's one of those things, and Scott Mitchell was just on, and I liked what he said. He said you have to be so big that they can't rig it against you. You have to be so good they can't rig it against you. And when you make plays, and if Utah fans are willing to admit this, and BYU fans have to be willing to admit this as well, like in the best seasons Utah has had, things have worked out in their favor that were sometimes beyond their control. Sometimes it was a call from a referee. Sometimes it was just a boneheaded mistake from an opponent. Sometimes, as it was the case the last time Utah won a Pac-12 championship, you had to have 3 other teams lose in the final week of the season just so you would win all the tiebreakers to make it to the Pac-12 championship game. Like, sometimes you need a little bit of help. BYU, a couple of times, as you've already alluded to, so they've gotten that help in a magical season for them. And Utah, it's like the tax is being extracted from the run that they've been on. It's like all of the
whatever deals were done with the devil are now being paid off by this season, and it's unfortunate to watch, but it is what it is. And I guess now the question for me on the micro level moving forward, it's Colorado, it's Iowa State, and it's UCF. I cannot see a world in which Utah wins these 3 remaining games. Colorado, I feel like, is a bad matchup because of what they are so good at. Your thoughts on the next outing for Utah, and what should we expect? If you felt like Saturday night was the pot boiling over, I mean, is there any steam left?
I think that's a very important question that Kyle addressed in his press conference today. The emotional hangover that's going to come from this game, I think will hit this team hard. I think it's impossible right now, Sean, for this team not to be down in the dumps. And even before the BYU game, I think the BYU game was just unfortunately another mark on the wall for this team. Like, how can this happen to us again? And as you mentioned, like the taxes are being withdrawn from the account. But listen, this is just the way it goes, man. Like, thinking back to that BYU game before we get on to Colorado, like Jake Retzloff, I think, dropped the ball like 4 times and managed to fall on it every single time. Like, there are just seasons where things go one team's way and things don't go the other team's way. Unfortunately for Utah right now, the microcosm is just 2 sides of the rivalry. That's just the way it goes. If Utah falls on that fumble that Jake had deep in Utah territory, they turn the ball over, the field's flips, and they're able to negate an eventual scoring drive. If Utah jumps on that fumble that Jake managed to drop twice on that bad snap, they're in business 10 yards away from the end zone. This is just the way it goes. It's unfortunate. But from a looking at the future point of view, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think Colorado's a terrible matchup for Utah because I think you could make an argument that maybe outside of Ohio State, Colorado has the best collection of wide receivers in the country. And it's a team that likes to get the ball out very fast. And Utah is the type of team that wants to make the quarterback hold the ball a little longer to hopefully get home. But that's something that they haven't done this year, Sean. I mean, they haven't turned the ball over. Like, I can't believe that we're talking about a Utah team that is like a good defense, but is wholly inefficient at turning the opposing team over and getting home to the quarterback. It's a very odd group to try to properly analyze because historically that's what that defense is known for. And that's why it's been able to keep that program afloat, frankly, for so many years, while the offense has basically been floating adrift for a very long time up until recently. So I don't know how much steam is left for this team, and it's going to be up to those guys to rally. And I don't know at this point what kind of hype collateral that the coaching staff can dive into, because it's going to be a very tall task to get these guys amped up, considering the way things have gone this season, the last 6 weeks, and especially after the loss to BYU.
If they're going to rally, I think offensively they're going to rally behind Brandon Rose. I think he played well enough that he should keep his starting position moving forward as long as he's healthy coming out of that BYU game. Look, it was a tale of 2 halves. It was a far from perfect performance. It was his first start in a very, very tough situation. Your thoughts on Brandon Rose as we are, 6 days away from when he has to do it again? And also, perhaps more importantly, the transfer portal window opens December 9th, so Utah might have to go shopping with this quarterback situation. What do you think of Rose?
Yeah, he looked more dynamic than Isaac Wilson had in previous weeks, and I'm not knocking on the 18-year-old true freshman who was thrust in the middle of things. I know he was banged up the last month, but beyond Isaac, beyond Brandon, Sean, this is a position that has been a thorn in this program's side for, it's safe to say, 20 years. Like, outside of, Tyler Huntley and Cam Rising, you can throw, specks of Troy Williams and, Travis Wilson in there. It has been a tough go. I think that this is, especially in this day and age of football, you have to have at least 2 starting caliber quarterbacks who are ready to go. Look at what BYU has. They have a guy who is, led them to a 9-0 season, and his backup is a guy who's been the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year before and has won a Big 12 conference. I know that's a unique thing with the way Bohannon got there, but you just have to be ready. And Utah doesn't seem to have been ready for any sort of contingency plan at that position since Cam has, gone on this really poor luck of, string of injuries. I mean, 2023, they signed a kid named Mac Howard, who is now a backup quarterback at Samford University, not Stanford, Samford. Nate Johnson's a backup at Vandy. Brandon Rose is, now the starter. Before that, their ads were Charlie Brewer and Jaquindon Jackson in the transfer portal. Jaquindon Jackson turned out to be a great running back, but he's not even with the program anymore. So, there are a lot of chips have to fall in the coming weeks. I don't know what Cam is going to decide. I know Kyle said that they're going to sit down hopefully as early as this week to figure it out, but they have to have, if they want to have a chance to compete next year, Sean, they have to have a Big 12 starting caliber quarterback ready to go, in my opinion, in the spring. Like, I don't think you can roll into spring saying, like, we hope Isaac Wilson develops, we hope Brandon Rose develops. You have to be able to have somebody come in and have a thorough, resume of experience in order to see if this team can get to where it wants to be in 2025.
This is not me arguing with you. I would never argue with you because you're smarter than me.
No, you can't. No, that's not true. Let's go.
But, okay, here's the thing. You're right. BYU's got this great situation at the quarterback position, and there are other schools. Texas has 2 starting caliber quarterbacks. When you have a Cam Rising, how do you convince someone better than Sam Heward, who has starts under his belt? How do you convince someone to come in and guarantee himself a backup spot? Because that's not how the transfer portal works. That's not how recruiting really works at all, with quarterbacks at least, unless you're talking about young guys. You're talking about high school guys. Hey, you could come and you could sit and develop behind Cam Rising. You can't get someone in a transfer portal when you have Cam Rising, I don't think. I'm not trying to be an apologist for this Utah staff or team that has had its quarterback struggles, but this is something people have been calling for all year. Like, how could you not have a better backup? I think you did have a better backup, and his name was Brandon Rose. And on top of that, like, the reason you can't have a better backup is because you can't tell some guy in the transfer portal, hope that Cam Rising gets hurt. That's why you're coming here.
So, great point, but I would say you target a player that has at least 2 or 3 years left of eligibility, knowing that this was going to be likely Cam's last year, still could be his last year at Utah, depending on what he decides. And if you have a deep resume of starting experience at any level, you're going to obviously, in my opinion, maybe have the leg up on guys that are already in the program that haven't started before.
But you're also going to want to start. That's the thing. No starting caliber quarterback wants to accept a backup role. That's just not how this position works.
Yeah. I mean, in the NIL era, you have to be able to even pay your backup quarterback. And when I say, go find a guy, I'm talking about, Mountain West level, guys in the Sun Belt, dudes who have done it before. And I understand your point of wanting to play, and the fact that the portal opens up, several times a year, maybe that changes things. But maybe I should say I should be more critical of the recruitment and in-house development of the quarterbacks behind a Cam Rising in recent years, because clearly they haven't panned out. Like last year, it was, Nate Johnson and Bryson Barnes. Bryson Barnes is a program legend for a plethora of reasons. But if you really think about it, a walk-on from Milford, Utah probably shouldn't have been starting in arguably the best season overall of the Pac-12 conference.
Yeah.
So it's like, and people can't, and I'm going to be honest, Sean, like, people can no longer compare this year to last year. I mean, last year was hard for this team, but that team won 8 games, and then it was down to its 5th string quarterback at the end, and it still won that game.
That team, that was the coaching staff's best performance over maybe the entirety of Kyle Whittingham's tenure, and this year is not that.
Bryson Barnes went into the Coliseum, Sean, and beat the number 1 overall pick. I'm not saying like Bryson beat Caleb Williams by himself, but his team did.
Yeah.
Like think about it. Like, when the autopsy of this season is finally kind of revealed and we can really dive into what went wrong at all the different levels, it's going to be a really interesting dissection because I honestly still am like having a hard time wrapping my head around everything. And honestly, I think one thing that everybody here overestimated and even nationally overestimated was the fact that Utah was relying on a bunch of very talented but very injury prone players and guys that are in their mid 20s now. It sounds harsh, but like if you're a 24, 25, 26-year-old college player who's had multiple season ending injuries, it is not a great look for you and your program to be heavily relied upon. There needed to be more, infrastructure in place to be able to help that. Mekhi Bernard has been the best and most important player, I think you can say, on the entire team. But this team still came into the season with Mekhi Bernard, who was historically a third down complementary back. They had really nothing else to complement him. And like you lose a guy like Jaquindon Jackson, who goes on to play at Arkansas, and he's hurt because he is unfortunately a type of guy that gets hurt a lot because of his running style. But I think this was an example, Sean, of just earned clout and an assumption that everything fell into place, that Utah was going to be just fine. But things don't always fall into place in football because the game is predicated on hurting the other team, hurting the other player. So you have to have contingency plans at various positions, not even backup or backup quarterback. This team, I think, has failed to meet expectations across the board, and that's something that the players and the coaching staff have to find a way to rectify if they want to turn the ship around next season.
All right, last thing, even though I should already let you go because I'm way past my clock, but I need to get this question in because it's, I think, the most important question as we finish out this 2024 campaign and decisions will be made on what happens in 2025. And your earned clout thing is based on the Utah football culture as we know it, the reputation that, unfortunately, this team has failed to live up to of what a Kyle Whittingham team is. And before the BYU game, I have to admit, I was very doubtful that culture was still intact, that culture still existed in the building. Even though they came away with a loss against the rival, that looked like a Utah football game. That looked like a Utah football team. All the warts and the bad offense and everything, it looked like a bunch of guys who play hard and try and get it done. Is Utah football culture still intact in your mind?
I think so. But Kyle spoke about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, Sean, and I found it really interesting. It's like it's hard to maintain culture in the NIL era when so many players come and go at such a rapid rate. But it's a very good question. I just thinking back to that BYU game, and there were just some plays where it's like historically, there was that play. I think it was Rapati it was like a pitch or a screenplay, and Teo Johnson lined him up to absolutely take him out rather than just wrestling him to the ground for like a 3-yard loss, and he totally whiffed. And Rapati went on to get a first down. Like I'm not slamming on this on Teo, but like that to me is almost a microcosm of what's gone wrong this year. Like the little things that Utah always did better than the other team, they just aren't doing anymore. And I think like that's what Utah always had going for it, and that's a key component to the culture. And maybe that's everybody just trying too hard, pressing, just like the frustration of the season is playing out in real time and various vignettes on the field. But I do think it's still there, but I'm just going to be the boring cliche sports guy and just say to me, you just always have to have a good quarterback. And like, I think defense is going to always handle itself as long as guys like Kyle and Morgan are in charge. But to me, like you always have to have somebody who's going to be the star of the show to take you there. And they had a guy and he took them there twice. And unfortunately for him and them, he's had a horrific rash of luck with injuries. And that's just the way it goes in football. So I do think it's still there, but you have to get the right guys in and you have to figure out the quarterback problem.
Chris, I always appreciate your time and your perspective. Thanks for joining me, sir.
Thanks, Sean.
Chris Kamrani of The Athletic. All Chris Kamrani writings are required reading. That's your homework here on the Sean O'Connell Show. All right, I asked the question about Utah culture. Kyle Whittingham did something unique before this game, before the rivalry game, to try and make sure that this team knew exactly what it was going into against BYU. I'll tell you what that was next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.
in the flat. He's got Bernard. The guy's got the 5 to the pylon. Is he in? Touchdown! Touchdown! Touchdown, Mekhi Bernard! He reached for the pylon and found it. They're waiting for the official review here just to make sure. All right, here's Kevin Marr with the call.
After further review, the ruling on the field stands. Touchdown.
Another highlight from the Holy War, courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. Bill Riley on the call. That was Scott Mitchell, who, right at the end. All right. I've abused the clock, as I always do, so this is going to be a really quick segment. Then we'll come back. Then we've got Riley Nelson joining us at 1:30 to talk about what this game meant for BYU. Look, I know Utah fans. This one hurts. You hate the call. You hate the way that the referees affected the game. I will say this. BYU, the argument for BYU fans that, like, hey, there was that ticky-tack face mask call on Isaiah Glasker when he took down Brandon Rose. That wasn't really a face mask. It wasn't, okay? Referees got that call wrong. If you're a Utah fan, you have to admit that. But that's the makeup call did not come with the hold, the defensive hold at the end of the game. The makeup call came on the roughing the passer assessed against Keanu Tanuvasa when he was running down Jake Retzlaff on the sideline and tried to hold up, and they kind of bumped each other on the white, and Retzlaff flopped, as he should, doing the smart thing, and he got the flag. That was the makeup call. That was not roughing the passer. That was not unnecessary roughness.
No, it wasn't.
That was silliness, okay? So that's what should have evened the scales in the referee's mind if they had to do that. And then, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'll reiterate it here. You do not throw that flag at a deciding moment in the game. If it requires all of us to zoom in and to slow-mo the play in order for it to be an obvious hold, which when you do that, it was a hold, all right? You don't do that with a minute left on 4th and 10. You just don't throw it. The refs wanted to be part of the story of this game, and they are, and they were, and that's very unfortunate. I still think Utah should have made the stops. I still think Utah should have kept BYU out of field goal range. I think that on the ensuing Chase Roberts catch after the missed pick from Cam Calhoun, you can't give a guy like that who's having a great day, you can't give him that much room in your secondary. Van Fillinger was in position to tackle Hinckley Rapati on that run that went around the end. He just didn't leave his feet. He tried to chase him down. You got to dive for the guy's ankles. The game is on the line. And instead he gets a 13-yard run and a first down that puts them firmly into field goal range. These are the plays, right? And I get it. You were exhausted and you were emotionally, you thought you won and now you didn't win. It's tough. Anyway, I told you that Kyle Whittingham before the game, before coming off the bye week and the conversation about, hey, do players on your team really know how much this game means? And he answered that question for us. He's like, I think so. I hope so. Well, he made sure. And he made sure by inviting former Utah football captains, guys that are my age and older, into the facility to speak with the team and to give them a sense of what this was. And Dave Revel, who was a former captain back in the Mountain West Conference days, was a featured player on Urban Meyer's first team here, and obviously Ron McBride's last few seasons. Local guy, former Alta High School guy, great player. And he posted on his, I think this is on Facebook, maybe it's on Instagram, several paragraphs of his confidence that this team was in the right mindset and was going to do the right thing. But Kyle Whittingham doesn't do that very often.
No, not
Kyle,
really.
He doesn't they're always accommodating of former players, and they always give guys tickets, and they'll let people have sideline passes if they request them. But he went deep into the well, and he went deep into the connections, and he brought back guys from 20 and 30 years ago to let the current players know what guys telling you what BYU means to them and why you have to beat your rival. The culture is protected and insulated and insulates the young guys in a lot of ways because of the folks that have done it before. And I just don't know how many more ideas there are, the special appearances that you can bring in and get these guys amped up and you can get the best out of them. I don't know if it's there. What this Utah football team needs to do, and it's going to be a Herculean task, is they need to find it within themselves to still in a 4-5 season coming off breaking loss to the rival, go and take on a bad matchup on the road in Colorado, who's got incredibly talented teams and especially is so dynamic in the passing game. Like, you have to find it within yourself now because there's nobody coming through the door, I don't think, that can help. And that's the task for this coaching staff and this team that is going to be very, very daunting.
Yeah, and Colorado did torch Texas Tech's defense. Like, their whole secondary got pretty much torched.
Dude. Shedeur Sanders has 3 wide receivers at his disposal, including a guy in Travis Hunter, who I do believe is the best overall player in all of college football and should win a Heisman Trophy, even if Colorado loses the rest of their games. Like, he's had an unbelievable season.
Yeah.
He's got those guys at his disposal, and he knows exactly how to use them. The only thing that can keep him off of that, he's very accurate. He makes pretty good decisions. You have to get to him. You have to hit him, and you got to do it a lot. That's what happened to him last year. That's why Colorado stunk last year. He had a lot of talent around him last year. Couldn't get the ball to any of them because they were just – he was trying to throw the ball off his back so often. And they've gradually gotten better at protecting him, and he's gradually gotten better at, like, sliding himself out of the pressure. And that's going to be the key to the game. And, look, thankfully, Utah got back. They had 3 sacks in this game against BYU. That's more than BYU had been giving up on average all year. And obviously that's been much better than what Utah was able to produce during that 4-game losing streak before the bye. And they still lost the game, but they at least got to the quarterback a little bit more. Zemiah Vaughn on the blitz. Fano and O'Toole, I think, combined for 1. Karene got 1. So hopefully that continues. But the idea is if you're a coaching staff and you're reaching into your bag of like, all right, this is rough. Let's keep these guys engaged. Let's keep these guys believing. I don't know what the next idea is. That was the perfect one before the BYU game. I don't know what the next one is.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, playing Gatane against Colorado might be a big one too, just because we know Shedeur is pretty mobile, and I don't know what defense has got to lock down Travis Hunter and all these other receivers.
Good luck locking down Travis Hunter. You really that's it. We'll get further into the evaluation of the matchup against Colorado as the week progresses. But like I said, I've abused the clock today. Again, some more thoughts on this rivalry game as we reset the conversation we began the show with. What do you need to do to improve from here, and why did this game slip through your grasp? And then it'll be Riley Nelson at 1:30. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.
All right, BYU football insider and legend Riley Nelson is going to join us in about 15 minutes. Sean O'Connell Show on a rough Monday for Utah football fans. 22-21, BYU finds a way to win the Holy War. Now, a lot of Utah fans think they found a way to win because the referees gifted them an extra opportunity. I'm not going to sit here and debate that with you. I've told you firmly, I believe that that is not a flag that should have been thrown at that situation in the game, not with the way that you officiated the rest of the game and that you've officiated the rest of the Big 12 games this year. It's been a very handsy and grabsy type of coverage situation all season long, and Utah's been on the positive end of that defensively and the negative end of that offensively, where the referees don't throw flags when we think there's pass interference. Now, the same happened in this game. Reducing the Holy War to one call by a referee is the unfortunate bad result, really, for both fan bases. Now, BYU fans get to be a lot more optimistic today. They get to be a lot happier today. Their team is still undefeated, firmly in the driver's seat in the Big 12 Conference, perhaps headed to a college football playoff. When the new rankings come out, they're going to be 7.
I'd say 6 or 7.
And they deserve to be. They should have been 6. They should have been no lower than 6 last year as an undefeated team. I don't think that there's a bunch of one-loss teams that belong above BYU. And look, I know you don't want to hear me say that on the home of the Utes, but right now, BYU is doing what it needs to do, finding ways to win, and they did down the stretch in this game. Utah had an opportunity to make a couple extra plays defensively, and I realize what a nasty ask that is. When the play before, after you back them up, after you back BYU up with a well-executed punt, you back them up against their own end zone, in the north end zone. It's loud, it's crazy, it's insane down there. And you get Retzlaff stuck in the pocket, and then you get Retzlaff to run out of the back of the end zone. Oh, but wait, there was a timeout called. And then you get Retzlaff down on the goal line, Karene Reed and Junior Tafuna, and then the holding call allows them to extend the drive. But, the next play could have been an interception. Unfortunately, you don't quite make that play. Then the next play after that was a deep completion to Chase Roberts, who had a great game for BYU. And then you had Hinckley Rapati for 13 yards. And you're seeing BYU, after it believed it had lost the Holy War game and spoiled its undefeated season, given new life, you're seeing them regain their composure and find a way to finish.
Yeah, and they've had a great season.
And it sucks that they were able to do it and that Utah was not able to. And I get it. It's easier to be the one who gets second life and is the beneficiary of the flag and stay focused and retain focus and go forward than it is to be the one who just got jobbed, or by your own perception at least jobbed, and now you have to find a way to scramble back and to get it done. But it's been like it's a microcosm of what the season has been for both teams. The ball bounces BYU's way on the fumbles that happen against Utah again. And that's not to take anything away from the Cougs, because they went into the game at halftime looking like they were far less of a competitor than we expected them to be. And they came out, still had the belief, played hard the whole second half, found a way to win it. 3 seconds left, the field goal goes through. I also don't know why Utah was taking timeouts on BYU's final possession. Even with the timeouts, they kick the field goal. There's only 3 seconds left. 3 seconds is you're not going to run the kickoff back. They're going to squib it like they did. You're not going to run the kickoff back. I'm sure that there's some clock management analytic that tells you got to take those timeouts. BYU had already burned their timeouts. BYU is now trying to build this drive, and there would have been mechanisms for them to clock it, right? But what it allowed them to do is it allowed them to run the football in the final drive twice.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have been able to do that. You should have made them pass. You should have made them pass, and that puts Jake Retzlaff in that pocket that you had collapsed 3 downs in a row when they were backed up into their own territory. I don't know why you called the timeouts. I'll ask Kyle Whittingham about that on the Coaches Show tomorrow night. As a Utah fan, you have been dragged through the mud these last 5 weeks, and this one was probably the final straw for a lot of you. But for me, I go the opposite direction. I thought there was a certain risk with this team coming out of the bye week that they were just going to show up against BYU and it would be clear they just don't have it. It just ain't Utah football as we recognize. It just isn't. And offensively, there was a lot left to be desired in the second half, but this team had its fight back, had its identity back, had its physicality back, had its aggression back. And it just wasn't quite enough to beat a still undefeated BYU team. But it gave me a glimmer of hope that Utah football is still there. Zach, I know you're like 9 years old. Have you seen the movie Hook?
Yes.
You have seen the movie Hook. Prove it. What's it about?
Now I don't remember because now I know.
See, you've never seen it. You lied to me.
Yeah, I did. I know. I'm like 22 years old. I'm not even watched Hook.
James Peterson, I'm going to save the Hook analogy for when James is back because he's my movie guy. He's my movie aficionado. In any case, this is a Utah team that was at least recognizable against BYU for what we came into the season expecting. Now, offensively, were they a lot more inept in the second half? Of course. Are they going to have a hard time building any kind of offensive momentum without now their second best this year, at least, offensive player? Mekhi Bernard's been your best offensive player. Brant Keithy's been your second best offensive player. Brant Keithy is now out the rest of the year. And you have to somehow go on the road against Colorado. I don't know off the top of my head how many points a game Colorado is scoring. So let me just look that up for you right now because it's going to be important to see. Now, against BYU, you were able to hold a BYU offense that was scoring 35 points a game to less than that. You've now reduced BYU's average to 33.7 points a game. Colorado is 6th in the Big 12 Conference at 32.4 points per game. So let's say because your defense is better than what Colorado's used to facing, you shave that bad boy down to like 23 points a game. You still got to find a way to score 23 points, and you haven't done that in how many weeks? And now you got to do it without Brant Keithy. It is not going to get easier for the University of Utah.
No, it's not. And this is where I'm saying, like, this is where the receivers need to get incorporated. Like, we understand Mekhi Bernard and Brant Keithy was your guy. But now it's the receivers' turn to step up and make big plays. That's kind of what we saw against BYU, but I think receivers need to get more involved throughout this offense.
There's an opportunity now to force feed Dorian Singer a little bit more. Now, he has been awesome, as I keep hammering home. He has yet to find the end zone. I don't know how you make it happen. I don't care if it's fly sweeps, tunnel screens, you send him on 9 routes until finally he can hit one, whatever it is. You got to get this guy into the end zone. He has been pretty unselfish in the way that he has played all year, and he's your most talented wide receiver. You got to get him into the end zone. And obviously, Brant Keithy was the guy who was kind of your old reliable when you got into the red zone. Now he's not there. So are you going to go with Caleb Lohner because of the physicality matchup with the size, the jump balls? Are you going to go with Dorian Singer, who's got the speed and the ability to make contested catches? These are all questions for Mike Bajakian that he's got to answer. It is a daunting task moving forward for this Utah football team to try and shake off 5 straight losses in a row, including one to your rival in BYU, and go take on the second best team. It might be the best team. I think it certainly is, at least on the offensive side of the ball, the most talented team in the Big 12 Conference in Colorado. And you got to find a way to win. You got to find a way to get yourself bowl eligible against Colorado, Iowa State, or UCF. I'm not as concerned because I saw that Utah culture, that glimmer of it, that glimpse of it. You rubbed some of the grime and the dirt off that had accumulated over the 4-game losing streak, and there was Utah red. It's like, okay, Rice Eccles Stadium felt like a home game. Okay, we're here.
This is what it's supposed to be. And unfortunately, you weren't able to get the win that would have solidified that. Now you're asking the team to kind of do it on its own. And I'm not as concerned as I was that you were going to see some attrition and you were going to see guys kind of quit, kind of give up. I think that this team, and Kyle Whittingham said it at his media availability today, the press conference, talked about how much he loves these players and how well they've handled all of this behind the scenes. Not everyone handled it well, and there was some, there's some locker room lawyering going on. We know that, but I'm less concerned that you're going to see guys jumping ship in the transfer portal, and less concerned that you're going to see guys jumping ship, more importantly, while there's still games left to play. And by jumping ship, I don't mean like quitting and walking away from the team. I mean like the quiet quit. I was concerned that would be a possibility if you got blown out by BYU, where guys they'd be there, but they wouldn't be there. I was wrong. I underestimated this team's character, I think, by thinking that was a possibility. So a good on the young men who are in this locker room for fighting the way that they did. Very, very unfortunate it came down to the situation that it came down to, and that the game's real story got reduced to, hey, should this have been a flag or not? And it's unfortunate for BYU fans and for Utah fans, like I said, because for BYU fans, you're a really good team that plays the game the right way. And instead of going in and having a definitive, no doubt kind of situation where you smash your rival, the narrative, and it's not just from Utah fans, although primarily from Utah fans, but the narrative is that, like, hey, did you need help from the referees to get this one done? I mean, that's not how I want to be talked about if I'm a BYU fan right now, if I'm a member of this BYU team. And it feels like that narrative takes away some of the credit that this team deserves, because they did make the plays to go down there. They made the kick. I mean, how many times in this rivalry has that kick been missed? Plenty. How many times has it been blocked? At least a couple. And this time they got it through the uprights. They deserve to be 9-0. They do. They fought their way through it. But Joel Klatt is sitting down saying, hey, this should not have been called. He is one of the thought shapers of national college football coverage, and that guy is saying hey, maybe you got bailed out a little bit here. I hate that the referees did that, especially to the Utes, but I even hate that they did that to the Cougs.
Yeah, I do too. And it's all you've been hearing, oh, it's not holding, oh, it's holding, that shouldn't have been a flag, that's too late to call that. It's we watched this whole game, yeah, we're all frustrated at the end of the night.
If your policy is that you want every questionable call to be zoomed in on and frozen and slow mode to decide whether or not it truly was a holding call, if that's your proof, is when I freeze frame this thing while Jake Retzlaff is already in the grasp, it's clear that there's a hold happening. I mean, you don't want that to happen to your team. You don't want to evaluate it that way if you're a Cougar fan. But again, the referees stealing some of the attention from this game is the only bad outcome of a really great game. It's the only way that this could have come out where you feel dissatisfied on both sides of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's why Mark Harlan took the press stand for a second, because that is drawing the attention away. But these guys put their hearts out, both sides, and you couldn't ask for a better rivalry game.
Texter 9279 says, hey, we all watched it and dissected it all weekend. Let's move on already. Really? You don't want to talk about the Holy War the Monday after the Holy War? You're in the wrong place. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network.
Caleb Lohner on for Utah. The snap is back, the kick is away. It's high, it's end over end, and it's good. With 3 seconds to play, the BYU Cougars take a lead, 22-21.
That's the game-winning field goal for BYU in the Holy War at Rice-Eccles Stadium. First time since 2006 the Cougars have come away from RES with a victory. That sound courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. A tough one for Utah fans, a great game that, for me at least, in some ways spoiled by the conversation about a call or a non-call. But an undefeated season continues for BYU football under Kalani Sitake. Riley Nelson, former BYU quarterback, joins me here to talk a little red and blue. Riley, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Good to be on with you.
How much did you enjoy the game up until the final 3 seconds?
Yeah, I mean that it was a slugfest. I did think going in, credit Brandon Rose, he brought a spark. Obviously, it was unfortunately for Utah only a spark for the first half to that offense. But man, I thought. My prediction was BYU was going to win by more than a touchdown. That's kind of what I thought. And so it was really surprising to me to really see that life that the Utah offense had in that first half. And then the reality was, the comment I was making to the people I was watching with was, it's crazy how good this Utah defense has been with no support from the offense, because you see once that offense was putting together drives and they were building momentum and there was some yin and yang to their offense and defense. Look how much more suffocating that Utah offense or that Utah defense was of that BYU offense, right? As evidenced by the fact that they held BYU's offense to only 3 points in the first half. And then when it kind of Utah maybe reverted to the mean a little bit, and the offense, it was two things. BYU made some adjustments on defense, and they picked up their ability. But then the Utah offense kind of settled into more of what we've been accustomed to seeing over the last 4 to 5 games. How much pressure that puts on a defense, and as stout and staunch and quite frankly incredible as that Utah defense has been all year. You saw how hard it is for a defense alone to win games when they don't have the support of the offense. And so I was, obviously as a BYU alum and fan, I was glad to see the tides turn. And as this rivalry does about what feels about 9 out of 10 times, it came down to the final play. And finally, for BYU fans, it worked out in their favor.
It was, look, I, like everyone who has any skin in the game from the Utah side, was like, I can't believe that flag was thrown right there. I don't want to ask you whether you think it was a hold, because we can freeze frame it, we could slow it down, and there was some holding going on. We know that. I want to ask you, because you played the position, for Jake Retzlaff, how much does that affect his decision? How much does that freeze him and maybe allow him to be sacked? I don't even know if he looked that direction. I think post-game that he said that he did. I don't know if I believe that or whatever.
Yeah. So that's actually that's been my, I haven't put it out on Twitter or anything, but everybody that I've talked with, former teammates and people and neighbors and all that, the reason why I think they threw the flag, because I also am in agreement that you got to keep that in your pocket unless it directly affects the play. The reason why I think it was thrown is, if you look, Retzlaff's eyes are that they start left on the snap. They start left, so he's looking at that one-on-one. And if you look at the defense and you look at the coverage, Utah has the defense rolled over to the wide side of the field, giving a one-on-one matchup on the backside. So as a quarterback, you're taught to check, especially in a situation like that, when Utah's playing tough man coverage and they've rolled their help over to the field side or to the wide side of the field, you're going to give your one-on-one a shot. So if you look, his eyes go there. He sees his dude. Now, whether or not he knew the dude got held or this or that, but bottom line is he sees his receiver unable to create any kind of separation. His eyes move off, and he's moving into the later part of his progression in the field. If that would have just been called by good defense, then so be it. But if that's caused by a penalty, and you're the ref, and you see the quarterback looking there as his primary read, and that receiver gets altered, in my opinion, that obligates you to throw the flag. I think if Retzlaff would have started with his eyes to the right, to the wide side of the field, and all of that fighting happens on the backside and away from the play, I think the flag stays in his pocket.
Fair enough. I'm glad I asked you that question because there is, you need to hear these things from quarterbacks. All right, so Utah, the very next play could have ended the game with an interception. Retzlaff, he's a gunslinger, man. He threw that ball. Cam Calhoun was in a position where he could have picked it. Were you nervous on that throw as that play was unfolding that maybe even after the flag saves the drive that, he made the wrong decision and it could have ended right there?
What's so crazy to me about the reaction, and of course, I think it takes playing in these games to have the kind of perspective that, we have, because I found that the reaction about the rep from both fans, and then is obviously we don't need to talk about Harlan, and obviously he's come out and made a statement, and that happens to the best of us, right? Emotions get the best of us. But what surprised me so much about that was the fact that they got that fourth down and how bad they looked on the 4 downs of the first 4 plays of that drive, getting that penalty. My confidence level did not go up that BYU's got this now. I thought it was delaying the inevitable, that Utah defense had a stranglehold on that BYU offense. And just the fact that, they had given them a fresh set of downs, they still got 80 yards to go in a minute 19 or whatever it was. And the way that the Utah defense was playing and the way that the BYU offense couldn't seem to execute, it's not like when they got that penalty, me as a BYU fan was thinking, oh, game's over. We got this in the bag. Rather, I thought it was all right, well, let's pray for a miracle. And that catch, by the way, that's been understated and all that thing. That catch by Chase Roberts, I did send a tweet out. I was like, Chase Roberts literally made the opposite of a business decision in that he's like, I'm going to sacrifice my neck for the rivalry. Doesn't matter. When I'm 50, I won't need to look up or down because I'll be a legend for having made a play. I mean, that was incredible the way he had to hunch his body, and he literally used his face to keep his body off the ground so that he could keep the ball, from being supported or the catch from being supported by the ground or anything like that. But obviously it took some tremendous plays, tremendous effort by those guys, and ultimately a super clutch kick. But yeah, even after that penalty, I didn't have a lot of confidence BYU was going to be able to close that out based on how that drive started and and really how the entire game went.
Okay, so after Chase Roberts' catch, and they've moved now to midfield-ish, BYU has no timeouts, and Utah uses their last 2 timeouts, I think, in the hopes that if BYU scored, they get the ball back. You're a quarterback trying to run that desperate. It's not even a 2-minute drill at this point. It's a 1-minute drill. You got to get into field position, and the opposing coach is stopping the clock for you. Was that the right decision, do you think?
I do think it was the right decision simply because and Jake Oldroyd was, as far statistically, in a 4-year starter and things like that. He was one. And granted, he's moved on. He's graduated from BYU a couple years ago. But Will Ferrin, watching the way this dude kicks, and I don't know. I can't evaluate kickers. I don't know what prospects he has beyond college. But as far as a college kicker, this dude is as solid as I see on a regular basis from a guy who watches anywhere from 6 to 8 games on a Saturday. He consistently strikes the ball. And then his stats. I mean, Witt had read the scouting report. He knew that Ferrin inside 50 yards is pretty much nails. And I know it's the rivalry and you're in Rice Eccles and things like that, but you got to play the percentages. So the second Witt didn't start stopping that clock until they got in the field goal range, until the field goal was inside 50. And so I did like his I would have done the same call because the reality is it was coming down to a make or miss on that kick. And if he misses it, let's say BYU wasn't able to run the clock all the way down, to where they got it with 3 seconds left. Let's say there was 30 seconds left on the clock. That the game was still going to come down to whether or not Ferrin was able to put it through the upright. So, in my opinion, stopping the clock was most definitely the right move.
I just like the idea better, and of course, it's all hindsight, and you know what didn't work, so you can easily question that. I like the idea of putting Jake Retzlaff back in the situation he was in when you were backed up against the end zone. He's got to make a play, and the offensive line was down there starting right tackle, and maybe you can get to him, whatever. But I get it. An incomplete pass stops the clock anyway. So, yeah, just one of the many things that as as a Utah fan or as a Utah observer, you're looking at it and going like, what could have gone differently to potentially have saved this game? And if you could save this game in a lot of ways for Utah, I think you save the season, at least make it a little bit more respectable. I don't have a high hopes moving forward for the Utes, but for BYU, I mean, they're on the opposite side of the coin. Your back was all the way against the wall, and you found a way to win with an epic drive to end the game against your rival. And now you're in the driver's seat. You're still undefeated. And even if you lose, you could lose 2 out of these final 3 and still be in a Big 12 championship game. I mean, what is the mentality of this BYU team right now, knowing that they have it all to play for?
What I've been impressed with in my interactions with coaches and players has been like, I mean, in their media stuff, they put together this bravado, and like someone was asking me because I think it was Connor Pay and Jake Retzlaff were asked like if they had any inkling of this season. They said we knew back in January when winter conditions. Like they didn't. Anybody's gonna say that, right? And like that's the bravado putting for it. But like as talking as a fellow alum and like a player, and like when we actually have man-to-man or player-to-player, former player-to-player conversations, those guys like BYU is not getting an inflated head. Like they're not dumb. Like they know they're getting the lucky breaks. They know now. They feel. Here's the thing. They know that things are breaking their way. Ball is bouncing their way. But they're not misattributing that to like their own talent or that, they're better this or that. Rather, and I don't know whether this is Coach Sitake or if it's Coach Hill or if it's Coach Roderick or whatever, but they believe that to be able to continue this streak, they are going to need elements of luck, but they believe that their work and preparation increases the likelihood that luck works out in their favor. And I just feel like that's a really balanced, like, stable way of looking at this crazy run, this once in a generation run that this BYU team is on. I mean, I think that they acknowledge the good fortune that they've had, and they acknowledge that it's going to take continued good fortune. So they're putting in the work to do everything that they can with that good fortune. But then the other thing is, kind of having that approach that they acknowledge this element of good fortune in their success. Even just acknowledging that sets them up that I don't think they're as scared or as much pressure is built up if they were to lose one of these last 3 games, which, by the way, if anybody saw what Kansas did to Iowa State, like Jaden Daniels is playing tremendous. Like that dude looked like what everybody thought he was going to be in the preseason hype. And then of course you got Arizona State, who they're frisky, and BYU has to go down to Phoenix and play them in what I'm sure will be an 8:30 kick, which, Utah fans know what that's like from earlier this season and all those years in the Pac-12. Like Arizona State's always feisty on a late night game in Phoenix. But to me, it just makes me. I'm not hearing like, we're the greatest. We're being slighted. We're, like they're worried about their ranking in the college football playoff. Like I don't get any of that talk. Simply, it's that we've had some good fortune, but we believe that our work and our preparation is increasing the likelihood or is increasing the chances of us being fortunate in these games, and so we're going to continue to do that.
I know you do watch a lot of football, and you watch a lot of Big 12 football. Look, I think BYU is going to be in the Big 12 championship game. Who do they play in your mind?
Yeah, and I should have done my homework. Just by how things are trending right now, I think it's going to be Colorado. Although I don't know what Colorado's last 3. What does Colorado's last 3 look like?
Let's see. They've got Utah next, obviously. Let me look it up for you real quick here because I don't know who they have after the Utes. But
as I remember, when I did look it up, and I'm pulling it up too. As I did look it up, I think that Utah is the toughest remaining schedule there. Now
it's Colorado. Colorado's got Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State to finish out.
Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You tell me, what did you think of Kansas's performance yesterday? Did you get to watch any of it?
I did, and I think that they're in a situation where they've always had some talent, and they're starting to kind of gel and to figure it out. I mean, I can't explain to you how Kansas, with this roster, lost 5 games in a row, including to like UNLV. I mean, it's Illinois, UNLV, West Virginia, TCU, Arizona State. They didn't even get beat by like the cream of the crop necessarily. So I think Kansas they're dangerous, but
you already said it. This BYU team is not getting ahead of themselves. This BYU team is not looking past anything, and they're doing it 1 week at a time, and they're doing it without any obvious individual superstar players that they're over-reliant on. It's just they make plays. They make one extra play over the opponent, or they make 15 extra plays over the opponent, but they do make the plays. So I understand there's nervousness and trepidation in the BYU fan base now, and you've earned that by being undefeated, and you want to see that stay. And so you probably over-index on being cautious. And I just think that BYU is a better football team. So Kansas, yes, dangerous, but coming to Lavelle Edwards and having to do it at what is going to be a raucous night with everyone all hopped up on Diet Coke. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I guess. So as I'm looking at the potential candidates, right? So Colorado has to come to Salt Lake, then they got to go to Kansas, and then they got to play at home versus Oklahoma State, and then Iowa State. Bottom line is everybody's got two out of the last three are formidable games.
Colorado's got Utah at home.
Oh, did I reverse that? Yeah, sorry. Colorado at home in Boulder, goes to Kansas, then Oklahoma State at home again.
Yeah.
Then Iowa State, it's crazy how many then Iowa State's got Utah on the remaining schedule, and Kansas State with Cincy as their kind of slam dunk win. And then you look at Kansas State, and they go Arizona, Cincy, and Iowa State. So it's going to be a battle to the end. And then what's crazy is you also got Arizona State and West Virginia at 4-2 there too. I mean, it's Colorado's to lose, but with the way that, yeah, I mean, I anticipate it. And can I tell you something just personal?
Yeah.
So Joe Klatt, former Colorado Buff,
yeah, one of my favorites,
is not given. And I'm not all about like needing flowers, but it feels like this dude is purposefully leaving BYU like out of his top 12. Like he has made it clear, and even when he came to Big Noon Kickoff, he was in Provo at Big Noon Kickoff for that game against Arizona and refused to like give BYU like any credit or any kind of flowers at all. And of course he released his top 10. BYU's not, after the game Saturday, released him not in his top 10. So it could be, I think this Big 12 finish is going to be wild. I agree with you. I think BYU is in there. It's just a matter of who they're going to play. And it could be any one of, at this point, which sounds crazy to say, it could be any one of 5 teams. But I hope it's Colorado, simply so that we can get the chance to play Joel Klatt's alma mater and take him behind the woodshed. Now, this BYU team doesn't really take teams behind the woodshed, but that's what I want, because Joel Klatt is like almost made it purposeful or intentional to like slight BYU, at least by my interpretation. And so the old athlete, old competitor in me wants to get him back a little bit for that.
Well, I can tell you why. It's because Joel Klatt is a Utah fan. It's
true.
He loves his Colorado Buffaloes #1, and he is probably #2 with University of Utah. He loves Kyle Whittingham. He loves the Utes. That's why he's not giving your Cougs any love. I want to see it be BYU and Colorado in a Big 12 championship game, because there could not be two culturally more opposite teams right now in terms of like the social media presence at the very least, right? Because BYU and the reputation of what Provo is versus what Colorado and like all the flash and the, everyone's got chains and everyone's driving fancy cars.
Chains, watches, sunglasses, cars, and we're like pimping our mascot. Hey, look, our mascot does a double backflip, and we can eat foot-long maple bars, in 10 seconds.
It's just like,
I like the contrasting styles.
It's going to be great if that happens. But look, it's been, at the expense, at least on Saturday, of Utah fans, it's been a magical BYU season, fun to follow, fun to watch, and I will say it every time. It's not possible for me to root against Kalani Sitake or the guys that I know on that staff. They're doing it the right way. So keep enjoying it, and thanks for joining me today.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
Riley Nelson, former BYU quarterback. We will finish the show with some trivia, give away some gift cards, and then a little crosstalk with Spence Checketts. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.
Grenadier. You know what? You probably want to escape. You probably want to get out in the mountains. You probably want to get away from the conversation and the social media. Do yourself a favor. Go out to 2400 West, 2400 South, 5600 West, the Warner Ineos dealer. Tell them, hey, throw me the keys to one of these Grenadiers. I'm going to drive up to the highest mountain I can find. I'm going to get out of cell phone range. Twitter's not going to work, and I'm just going to decompress from this holy war situation. The vehicle is capable of doing it. Whether you are or not, well, that's up to you. WarnerIneosGrenadier.com. Wrapping it up with one trivia question, 877-353-0700. How many times did Mekhi Bernard touch the ball for Utah offensively in the Holy War? How many times? I want more of Mekhi Bernard. He's been your best offensive player. How many times was his number called on offense? 877-353-0700 for some Lemon Shark Poke gift cards. All right, and also Farmer and Chemist gift card for redeeming in-store for the Farmer and Chemist products down there in historic Midvale. The Drive with Spence Checketts is coming up next. Hi, Spence.
Hello, Sean. Happy Monday. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. It was fun to watch the game with you on the sideline.
Yes, it was.
Dodging water bottles at the end. It wasn't just BYU fans that were hit by water bottles. It was the two hosts on the flagship home of the University of Utah.
I probably deserved it. I don't know if you did. I probably deserved it.
Oh, I guarantee I did, and I do, like aggressively, continuously. I just, it's funny, and you probably have seen the same thing. This game always brings out so many interesting dynamics of these two fan bases. And you have BYU fans that badly want to claim the moral high ground all the time, so badly. And so when Ute fans give them any fodder to send out a video, and let me stop there real quick. There were some videos going around, and look, I don't live on the internet. I didn't see all of them, but I did see one of this young lady in a beanie who described being at a football game. That's all it was. She wore BYU gear with her family to Rice-Eccles Stadium, and it was a 5-minute video that basically said, we were in a hostile environment in a football stadium wearing the gear of the home team's rival, and some people yelled at us. And I'm like, why did I waste 5 minutes of my life watching? Have you ever been to a football game before? Have you ever been to a rivalry football game before? It was a nothing burger. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't incidents. There are. I've got a dirty little secret. I've been to rivalry games at LaVell Edwards Stadium, and guess what? I've seen fans throw trash on the field. I've heard fans use profanity in the direction, wait for it, of people wearing Ute gear.
Sorry.
I have seen it with my own two eyes. So the game was awesome. The environment was awesome. We watched it together from the sideline. The night was awesome. But outside, it's the outside of the line stuff that always just is so interesting to me to witness after it's over.
So it's weird for me. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment or whatever. I love that part of the rivalry because there's so much about living in Utah that is like insular and singular, right?
For sure.
There's so much about being here that in a lot of ways is better, and in some ways it's like people look at you and they cock their eyebrow and they're just like, what is Utah like?
Mm-hmm.
You're not like the rest of the United States. Absolutely true in a lot of ways. This is exactly like Alabama Auburn, Alabama LSU, where you hate the other people.
Yeah.
You want to prove, and whatever you interpret the call based on what color goggles you're wearing, you interpret the actions of opposing fans is completely unacceptable, while when you and your friends do it, it's just part of the rivalry. And for some reason, I like that. For some reason, I love looking at BYU fans, using their favorite term, look at these classless Utah fans throwing the water bottles onto the field. I love that because I love that, especially in 2024, you can easily just pull up the receipts of the last time BYU fans were unhappy with the refs in their stadium, throwing water bottles at them.
Cougar tails flying out of the stands.
It was a stellar night at Rice-Eccles Stadium. It restored my faith in this Utah football program in 2024 in some ways, and ultimately it still led to a loss. I'm bothered that the referee call hijacked the discussion a little bit, even on my show. I didn't want it to, but it does. Yeah. Because it's just part of it. And nationally, this game is being talked about by some of the guys that you and I like in the business. And the first thing that they bring up is whether it's a call or a non-call. And the game itself had a lot more to it than that. So that's unfortunate. But one team remains undefeated. The other team is now on a 5-game losing streak. And as I said earlier, I don't know how many more bullets, to use an inappropriate analogy, how many more bullets you have left in the chamber to try and like rally the troops one more time as you go on the road against a really good Colorado team. So gonna be an interesting week.
Yeah, I think it probably helped that this weekend didn't have a ton of massive big-time matchups. Had a few. Miami loses, Georgia loses. Like, it's crazy. Every weekend we get all these upsets. But this was kind of one of, I'd say, 2 or 3 marquee games in the whole country. And enough talking heads, the Joel Klatts of the world, know what Utah BYU is all about. Joel went to Colorado. He grew up in this region. That it did get a lot of attention. I did get a lot of messages from buddies I grew up with. They're like, dude, I'm going to bed. It's like, it started at 10:15 where I grew up. And so on the East Coast, a lot of people tapped out. But yeah, I loved that night. I thought it was fun overall. And, ultimately the stuff that happens after the fact where these two fan bases, again, it's so funny. BYU fan, moral superiority. They want that high ground so badly. Ute fan loves calling out the hypocrisy of said moral high ground. And so you just get these back and forth. And then the faction of the social reaction that might crack me up the most are the Ute fans that tweet out about how disgusted they are of their fellow Ute fans and what happened. And, hey, we're not all that way, just so you know. And then you can check their timeline, for other horrible things they've said before. It's like the whole thing is just a spectacle. I love it. I love it every year, and I'm excited for it already next year.
What's coming up on the show?
More of this. Yeah, more of this. Scott Mitchell joins us today. We are going to have, let me pull up the rundown since I have it in my backpack as of now. Dave Fleming, Kyle Bonagura, who is in the building, Scott Mitchell, Andy Larson. We'll bring you back Coach Witt's comments from earlier today. And, yeah, a lot of a reaction Monday after a BYU win on Saturday night.
The sun is shining, whether you're a Utah or a BYU fan. You're breathing air. If you're bothered, if you're too bothered, if you want to fight somebody over it, go get a little sun on your face.
Eat an Uncrustable. You can't be in a bad mood when you're eating an Uncrustable.
You also can't be an adult if you're eating an Uncrustable.
That's not fair. It's a healthy snack. And
it is not healthy.
It's healthy-ish. You could do worse. I have one a day. I'm addicted.
Yes, peanut butter Oreos and Uncrustables, healthy snacks.
Fair enough.
Sean O'Connell.
Where's my shake, by the way?
I didn't say when I was going to bring it, but I will bring you one. I owe Spence a baklava shake, but he owes me Jersey Mike's, so maybe we'll have to do an exchange. Stay tuned for The Drive. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 792.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.